G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kaitlyn and I'm an American living in beautiful Sydney, Australia. Over the last couple of years, there has been a boom of expats talking about Australia, what it's like moving not just from America, but from all around the world. People move over for different reasons, under different circumstances, and a lot of people love to hype up how amazing Australia is, how great of a place it is to live. I've definitely done that in plenty of videos, and you know what, the truth is living in Australia is amazing. But to be honest, there are some things that some channels and some people just way overhype about Australia. I love living over here. I wouldn't change moving over here for anything, but I think some people who are moving over here need to have some realistic expectations, and all of these just positive videos are kind of setting some people up for failure. Let's talk about 5 things that some expat channels overhype. Grab a Bicky, grab a cuppa, and let's get right into this video. Number 1 is how easy it is to find work over here and how many wonderful jobs there are available over in Australia. Let me tell you, this is absolutely specific to your circumstances and your visa. Also, the country you come from and what qualifications you have from that country. Just because you studied for a few years to be a doctor over in the States doesn't mean that you can just come over to Australia and start practicing medicine here. Just because you trained to be a teacher in India doesn't mean that you can just come to Australia and start teaching right away. I worked in law over in the States. Let me tell you, it was hard as hell for me to find a job moving over here because the legal profession just isn't set up the same way over here as it is in the States. There are so many nuances to different industries here, and visa requirements vary depending so much on your own set of circumstances. People think, oh, I'll just come over on a working holiday visa. Working holiday visas do have limitations, you guys. There's some farm work that's required, and you're not allowed to work for certain places for more than a 6-month period of time. There are a lot of really specific circumstances that you need to be aware of. If you're not sure, talk to a migration agent before you come over here and spend thousands of dollars on fees. Hello?
A few moments later.
Even though you can get jobs here in Australia, just be prepared. It's not going to be quite as easy as you think. The job market's getting more and more competitive, and maybe a year ago people were a lot more desperate for workers than they are now. Australia still has a pretty competitive job market over here, so unless you have a job already lined up, be prepared. It might take you a little bit longer to find work than you think. Know what your visa limitations are, especially if you're coming over on things like a student visa or a working holiday visa. Number 2 is the beautiful weather over here in Australia. Those gorgeous, sunny, warm days that are perfect to go to the beach or go camping or have a barbecue. Yeah, of course Australia has beautiful weather. It also has torrential floods, massive bushfires, snow, droughts, wet seasons, dry seasons. Australia has a little bit of everything, and that means the bad weather days too. This is the first summer I've been here where we haven't had a La Nina to deal with here in New South Wales. Queensland had some massive flooding last year. It's October and there are already bushfires going around, so you know what? Yes, the weather is beautiful, but you are going to have to deal with some natural issues over here, like bushfires and severe flooding. So if you're moving to Australia, know what the area you're moving to is like. Take a look at the history of what it's been like. If you know any locals in that area, definitely talk to them. There are so many Facebook groups and Discord groups and whatnot out there that you can join. That'll give you a rundown of what it's actually like living in certain areas, because let me tell you, some people are not completely honest about what it's like living in some areas. Number 3 is what it's like traveling around Australia. Australia is this huge, vast place full of so many different kinds of locations you can go to. We're talking about mountainous areas, we're talking about gorgeous beaches. If you want to go sledding or snowboarding, there are some gorgeous places to go, especially in the southern half of the country. There are deserts. There is just so much around Australia, you guys. It is a very geologically diverse area, and there are so many places to see. Like really, there's over 10,000 beaches in Australia. It'd be almost impossible to visit all of them in one lifetime. Unless that was a bucket list thing and something you actually were determined to do. I'm sure somebody at some point has visited every single beach in Australia. But that's not something the average Aussie's going to do. The reality is traveling around Australia is not as it seems. Now, if you're able to pack up your life and throw everything into a van or into a car, sure, you can drive around Australia and travel. There are plenty of van life people who dedicate entire channels to what it's like traveling around Australia this way. But that's not what the average everyday Aussie is doing over here. I've met so many Aussies who have not been to every state and territory, and when I say that, there's like, what, 8 or 9 of them? I know people who are in their 50s who have never been off the mainland part of Australia. I know people who've only been to like 2 states. There are some people who just aren't avid travelers, which I completely understand. But if you're coming to Australia thinking you're going to be able to travel all over the place with all this annual leave time that you have, you're going to be in for a little bit of a wake-up call. First of all, if you're traveling around school holidays, the prices jack up exponentially, you guys. So when the school holidays strike, be prepared for those huge price spikes in hotels, in flights. I mean, it is almost like robbery around those times of year. If you're somebody who loves going around to big major cities and you love traveling around places like London and Paris and Berlin, the reality is Australia has like, what, 6, 7 major cities that you can see? But the reality is it takes so long to get to a lot of these places. It's almost as far from Sydney to Perth as it is like DC to LA. So a lot of these places people will fly to, and it is getting incredibly expensive to fly around, even domestically here. Mark and I are planning a trip to Melbourne, and it costs us like over $1,500 for 2 of us for round trip tickets to Melbourne. That is insane. That feels like highway robbery. So we all know with inflation, airfare prices have absolutely skyrocketed. And you know what? Unless you're going to be able to take weeks and weeks, months, maybe even a year off to go get a van and travel around Australia, it's getting a lot pricier, you guys. It comes with a major price tag if you're going to travel around Australia. So the average everyday Aussie isn't traveling all around the country. And the reality is there's fewer places that people tend to visit compared to other major backpacking areas like Europe or all across Northern America or South America. Australia does not have a great interstate public transport system, you guys. Yes, there are trains that go back and forth, but again, you're going to pay quite a hefty price tag on those. So just if you're traveling around Australia, be prepared. It is going to cost you a lot more than it would if, say, you were traveling around Europe or even traveling around the US. Number 4 is Medicare and the healthcare system over here. And let me just start this off by saying, as an American, I am so incredibly happy and grateful to be living in a country that has Medicare. Let me start off by saying that. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily great over here. And when I say that, there has been an increase in people getting private health insurance over here. The government seems to slowly be defunding Medicare or putting less and less money into it. Wait times for Medicare tend to be a lot longer than if you have private health insurance. Medicare doesn't cover ambulance, it doesn't cover dental or optical, it doesn't cover rehab or chiropractor visits. There's so much that Medicare doesn't cover that people have to pay out of pocket for here unless you pay for private health insurance. And even with private health insurance, you might have to pay something, but it's going to be significantly less than if you were just on Medicare. While I'm incredibly grateful that if I go to a hospital, it won't cost me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars like it would in the States. And I'm grateful that having private health insurance is quite frankly optional over here. I don't have to pay for private health insurance, I choose to. But a big reason that I choose to is because Medicare has these really long wait lists. There are fewer hospitals I can see if I'm just on Medicare. I can go to pretty much any hospital around the country with private health insurance, but you can't do that with Medicare because there are some hospitals that are private only. I can see a larger number of specialists. I can get shorter wait times with some specialists. And on top of that, I can pay a small fee for extras and have dental and vision pretty much covered, or at least pay significantly less than if I just had Medicare. So while having Medicare is absolutely phenomenal, trust me, there are a lot of other countries that have it better. Last on this list is the education options over here. Australia has amazing universities. People get a world-class education over here in Australia. But if you're an international student, aka you don't have permanent residency, Australian citizenship, or you're not a New Zealand citizen, there are some universities that won't even accept you as a student. If they do, they charge you international fees instead of domestic fees, and we're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars difference. We're not talking a couple $100, you guys. I'm talking there are some places where it's almost like half the cost if you're a domestic student compared to an international student. Some people will wait years until they get permanent residency in order to further their education here. And on top of that, if you're an international student, if you don't have permanent residency, if you're not a citizen, actually, I don't even know if this is eligible for permanent residence, but I think if you don't have citizenship, you're not eligible for things like fee help or HEX help. None of that is available to you. You have to pay completely out of pocket. Again, we're not talking cheap course fees. There are a lot of universities that it's like over $3,000 for an entire course. And if you're taking 6 courses in a year, that definitely adds up if you're paying for it out of pocket or if you have to take out a personal loan or student loan somewhere else. There are people who have tens of thousands of dollars in HEX debt and help debt. And let me tell you, even though the system is set up better than it is over in the States, the fact that education is still so incredibly expensive over here feels like robbery. Even if you are a domestic student, it's not necessarily cheap to get an education over here. The more strict certain industries are becoming with regards to regulations and certifications and qualifications, the more education's starting to feel like it's becoming unachievable here. Not just as somebody who's moved over here who doesn't have permanent residency, who is years away from getting citizenship, but even just the average everyday Aussie. If you added up the cost for things like a master's degree, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars for that degree. For a little while, I was looking into being a psychologist over here, and I realized I would not only need an advanced diploma, but I'd also need a master's degree, and it would cost about $60,000. And those programs don't even take people who don't at least have permanent residency. So while education is readily available over here, be prepared to pay for it. Because while the costs aren't as high as they are in the States, and the student loan system isn't as predatory as it is over in the States, slowly but surely universities here are becoming so much more for-profit than they have ever been before. Even TAFE is costing thousands of dollars for a certification. I was looking at Cert 4s, and the cheapest one I could find in an area that I would consider studying in was over $5,500. People tell me all the time TAFE used to cost a few $100s, like finding something that was $1,000 was considered expensive before. And now it's like good luck finding anything that's above a Cert 3 that's going to cost you under $5,000. So that's it for this video, you guys. I know it was a little bit of a negative video, but the reality is when I want people to see these videos, I want people to know the good and the bad. I want people to have a real full image of what it is like moving to Australia, because there are some things that absolutely shocked me, and I wish people had talked about the negatives a little bit more, especially the negatives in a realistic sense. So I hope you see where I'm coming from with this video, you guys. I love Australia. I love moving over here. Wouldn't change it for the world. And if you've been a follower of this channel for a while, you absolutely know how much I love living in Australia. But there are some things that some YouTube channels just really overhype about what it is like living over here, and I wanted to set the record straight. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you liked it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. I really, really do appreciate the support, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.